Okay then, hi everyone. In this series I'm going to review the Chaos section of the Imperial Armour Compendium. I'm going to be working on the basis that we all know the rules already. This isn't going to be a specific look at each page and all the stats and everything. This is really just a more opinion based, maybe tactics based review of each individual unit. As into detail as I can go, but one thing I decided before starting this review series is that I'm not going to be following through on my original idea of using combinations and synergies and things with the Psychic Awakening, Faith and Fury book and Chaos Space Marines Codex, because we've already got the Death Guard book out and we don't know really how long it's going to be before we get a new Chaos Space Marines Codex. It could be any time, and I don't want all of this stuff that I say to be just invalidated in a couple of months. So I'm going to just try to leave the Psychic Awakening alone because we will lose it. And I doubt much of it's going to get carried over into the new Codex, unfortunately, because it never is. So having said that, we'll just get straight into it with the Decimator. Now, the Decimator has always been one of my favourite units. It's completely unique. Most of the Chaos stuff tends to be based on something else that the Imperials had, and it's just a bit of a warped version, but the Decimator is completely unique. It's a really cool model. It always reminded me of some kind of 80s Judge Dredd type thing because of the helmet, or maybe a bit like the big cyborg war robot thing that the evil Judge wakes up in the Stallone movie. They look amazing, and they were really good in the rules. They were really good last edition. They're one of my top performing units, I think. They've gone through some changes, but I think that out of this book, I would say that they're one of the winners. All the units in this book had some significant changes. Some of them were, nerfs really, just straight up nerfs. I think the Decimators really came out on top. They're definitely winners. One of the main things that changed is they gained 4 wounds. Now, normally I wouldn't be happy about jumping into the bracket territory, but it's not like they jumped up from 9 wounds to 10 wounds or from 8 wounds to 10 wounds. They got a whole 4 extra wounds. 8 to 12 isn't bad, and it does mean that, it was nice if you were limping around on 1 wound, you could still shoot with your full BS and that sort of thing, but it does mean that now if you were limping around on 1 wound, you'll now have 5 wounds still. So I think it's significant enough to be considered good, and not just some kind of nerf. But of course it does mean that your stats degrade now. They still gain 1 wound back each turn with Inferno Regeneration, unless that changes in the new Codex. We don't really know what that's going to be in the next Chaos Codex, but for now they regen a wound. Now, there's 2 main weapons that I think are really what I would use Decimators for. And one of them, the main one, the Soul Burner Petards, they are what I thought was going to be nerfed into the ground, to be honest. I really thought they were going to just get hammered. If they even carried through at all, I wouldn't have been surprised if they got dumped. You can see both of mine. I've got a third one that isn't painted yet with the double Soul Burners. They're functionally the same. Still Assault 24 inches, 2d3, which do just mortal wounds on hits, except now they do have the slight nerf, and it is a slight nerf, that they only do mortal wounds on 2+. So if you rolled some 1s after you've hit, then you'll drop a couple, but considering they used to cost you 60 points each, and so the total unit was 210 points, and they now cost, I think, 10 points each, and bump it from 160 points base to 180 points. That's a 30 point drop for the small nerf of maybe rolling some 1s, but functionally I think that they're still going to be incredible. And I'm just surprised. I'm really surprised, to be honest. Honestly, I didn't think they were going to keep it. I'll definitely have to have a go with mine sometime. Now, the Storm Lasers, I like the Storm Lasers in theory. I have one built with Storm Lasers. I haven't really used it in game yet. In theory, Assault 6, so 12 shots coming out of one of these things at BS 3+, Strength 6, AP -2. It should be quite good. The trouble is it's only damage 1, so it's not going to be great for Marines and things, but 12 shots, it's not just Marines, 12 shots at Strength 6, AP -2, that's going to be wounding Tau on 2s, put them down to a 6+ save. It's going to be wounding Eldar on 2s with no save, Guard on 2s with no save. Tyrannids on 2s with no save mostly. You know, there's a lot of things that I think if you had, you know, a unit of 5 or 6 or even 10 sitting somewhere, you know, 12 shots from this thing, you could put Demon Forge on it, as long as that stays the same, reroll hits and wounds and just wipe something away. I think that it could be quite good, and it's movement 9, range 36, assault, so really long range. If you just had it maybe run up one side of the table, like really hug the edge of the table and run up there, I think it could work, but I'm not sure. I'm going to have to try some games with it. But the other weapon, aside from the soul bonus, which I think is a real winner here, and it's why I actually think that, you know, last edition Decimators or Dreadnoughts was a bit of a choice, because they're both elite slots, and really I think, you know, I think the Decimators had a place, but people tended to go for the Dreadnoughts mostly, which, you know, is fine. But I think now the Decimators have definitely come out on top, because they, unlike the Leviathans, for example, who lost -2 AP on their storm lasers, the Decimators actually gained it on their Decimator butcher cannons. They went down a point in strength from 8 to 7, so they won't be wounding Marines on 2s anymore, but they gained AP -2, and that I think that's a positive trade-off for me. Wounding Marines on 2s was nice, wounding vehicles on 3s, you know, toughness 7 vehicles was nice, but a lot of the time the AP -1 was lost, because if you shot something in cover, you lost it, and it was just Marines taking 3+ armor saves like normal. Or if you were fighting anything with, you know, like AdMech with Shroud Sarm maybe, you know, that's just the AP -1 gone immediately. And they, you know, I've used them a few times where they've just showered something in a load of shots and just bounced off because they've had no AP at the end of it. But AP -2, any vehicles you catch out in the open, you know, they're going to be down to a 5-up save. Marines in the open down to a 5-up save. Even in cover, you'll still be getting at least -1. You'll still be putting Marines down to a 4+ save in cover, or vehicles with Shroud Sarm thing down to 4+ save. I think that it's incredible, and they're still 36 inches. You can still, again, I don't want to go too much into the Chaos Space Marines Codex, but you know, last edition you had this sort of the Demon Castle where you'd have, you know, 3 Decimators with twin butcher cannons, and the what's it called? Lord Discordant, and a Master of Possession and all that sort of thing, and a big bomb, and they would just give them +1 to hit, reroll 1s to hit and wound, all that sort of thing. I think that's still definitely a really valid tactic now. I've never got a chance to use it so far myself, but I hope I do one day. Again, it might change with the Codex, but I think that for now 3 Decimators with butcher cannons and a Lord Discordant and Master of Possession is still going to be a really good way to go. It's going to be even better at hosing Marines away from things now. Or again, the soul burners, you know, they're a bit niche. You know, you might think they're a bit rubbish if you end up against an army that has, you know, more chaff units, things that don't have much of a good armor save anyway, but they can come in clutch sometimes. I've always hated Necron Wraiths. You know, with the 3+ invulnerable save, I've always struggled to deal with them with a Chaos Space Marines army. But, you know, take a Decimator and you can just hose them away with no trouble at all. So, or, you know, units with Storm Shields, they've always been a big deal. You can just get rid of them. But anyway, that's the Decimator. I will just mention that the Decimator claws, they are better now. They used to be just +3 strength, which made it strength 9, AP -3 damage 3. They're now only AP -2 and damage 2, but nope, sorry, I looked at the wrong profile. They're ×2 strength, so you're strength 14, which is obviously better than 9. Still AP -3 damage 3. The thing that always put me off them before though was they weren't written in the way that Dreadnought claws are written in, where if you buy 1 it's 30 points and if you buy 2 it's 40 points. For the Decimators you had to buy both of them for 60 points, plus the points for the Hellflamers. So I think that actually, you know, 5 attacks, they've got 6 attacks. 6 attacks if you've got 2 claws, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s most likely. AP -3 damage 3, it's really good, it's really solid, especially if you had Demon Forge. So actually, you know, I think that's definitely a good way of running it as well. I haven't got any built currently, but I was thinking of getting maybe one for the World Eaters and seeing how that goes. And the Hellflamers are now unique to Decimators too. They used to be on all the Dreadnoughts, I think. Does the Leviathan still? No, so they used to be on all the Dreadnoughts, but now it's just the Decimator that has the damage 2 heavy flamer, essentially. It's a heavy flamer, but damage 2. So that's another good reason to take them, just to get some damage 2 flamers in. All around, honestly, I think all the options are good, and it's a really solid unit. It's well pointed, you know, it's not too expensive anymore. And yeah, as far as this book goes, and all the changes, all the, you know, nerfs and things, I think that they've definitely come out on top. Definitely a unit that you should go to if you want demon engines, I think. So then the Contempt of Dreadnoughts. Now, a lot of people, I think it's different for the Chaos Space Marines compared to the Space Marines. A lot of people have said that Contemptors aren't really worth taking now for Space Marines because they have their own Codex one. That's probably true because they are Martial Legacy, so they cost you a CP each time you want to take one. But you know, for Chaos, I think they've got more place because Chaos don't have Codex Contempt of Dreadnoughts. And they're most likely going to be one of the few things that actually keep the core keyword. So if you are wanting to do a big, you know, maybe 3 Contemptors with las cannons, you know, you'll still get the Marines. I think could do that in Codex, but you can't. So as a Chaos player, I think that there is still a place for the Contempt of Dreadnoughts. I think that the double twin las cannon are a good option. I've got some of those. I haven't painted them, so they're not set up, but. Here we've just got a couple with fists and chain fists. Now that is a bit of a change and a bit of a disappointing change because there's no reason to take a combat weapon over a chain fist really. They're both the same except the chain fist is better. It comes, I think, base points with the fist and you pay 5 points, just 5 points to upgrade it to a chain fist, but there's no rule anymore. There's no rule anymore that gives you +1 attack for having 2 weapons, so there's really no reason to have a chain fist and a normal fist. Because again, the normal fist, I think it used to have a rule where you got to reroll wounds against infantry, a bit like a lightning claw. So that was kind of why you might choose the chain fist or why you might choose the normal fist, but it doesn't have that now. It's just worse than the chain fist, which is only 5 points. You're going to take it. I think that I might have to take the normal fists off of my dreadnoughts and maybe put another gun on them because, you know, some weapons like the las cannons are another 25 points or 20 points, I think. I don't have the points here. I think they're 20 points for the twin las cannons. But a lot of the other weapons are not actually very expensive. How much is the las cannon? Yeah, 25 points. But a lot of the, you know, you can have a conversion beam cannon for 5 points or a assault cannon for 10 points. You know, so that you don't have to pay loads of points on a heavy gun. You'd be much better off just paying the 5 points for a conversion beamer on this thing, I think, than going for the chain fist and the fist. So it's a bit of a shame because I like the combat ones, but you know, it's all right. Other than that, though, you know, it's okay. It's okay, but I don't think many people are going to want to pay a command point. I think that the only reason you might see these is with the Chaos Army because they're just doing the same thing that Marines can do with their own codex, but they're not in the codex, so they're going to just have to pay the 3 CP to get 3 of them and put them near a character or something to use the core choice rerolls. They were a much more standout choice over something like a Quad Las Predator last edition. You know, you really wondered, like, why does the Predator even exist when you can just take these? Now, though, you know, you'd be saving a CP just taking the Predators, and now everything can move and fire, and still be BS3. That's less reason to take a Dreadnought. They do have a 5+ invulnerable save. I find that vehicles mostly have a 5+ save, you know, a lot of the time anyway. But you know, against most weapons that shoot at them, unless they're really heavy. But it's still good. It doesn't go up to a 4+ in combat anymore, which is a shame. That was one of the other really good things I liked about Chaos Contemptors. You know, just 2 of them could handle a knight or pretty much anything, because with the 4+ invulnerable save, they were really tough to get rid of, you know, unreasonably tough to get rid of, I think, for the points. But you know, it's a good choice. I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't really bother with any of the other weapons personally. You know, the plasma blaster and the conversion cannon isn't that great. You know, I think that for me they are just going to be a case of, you know, do I want core rerolls on, you know, las cannons and things? Can't have that on predators, but I could take these. I'd be paying a CP, but you know, in the long run, if you re-roll enough ones, you're kind of making those CPs back anyway if you compare them to re-rolls. So I think they've got a place, but not really as much as they were, and I certainly won't be using the double combat ones anymore. I'll definitely have to have at least one gun, maybe a chain fist and a twin las cannon, if I don't want to take 2 twin las cannons per guy. But yeah, they're okay. And then the Leviathan, I mean, obviously, I think the Leviathan's gone through the most changes, probably. It's, you know, had its stat line absolutely obliterated. I think it was a bit too harsh. I think that they should have left something that made it, you know, unique, because it is a giant, fat dreadnought. It's supposed to be this big, buff dreadnought. Yes, it wasn't really right that it could literally single-handedly just smash knights to pieces and that sort of thing, but I think that it should have kept something to make it a bit better. Like I said earlier, the storm cannon is only AP -1 now. Well, if we're talking space marines, the storm cannon is only AP -1 now. The butcher cannon butcher cannon arrays were always AP -1, but they were strength 8 at least. This is not strength 8 now or AP -2, and it's not heavy 10 either, it's heavy 8. So it's essentially a butcher cannon array, but only strength 7. I would whinge more, but the points are so much cheaper that, you know, honestly, even with the nerfs to the stat line, even with the change to the guns, I do still think it's a valid choice. I don't really think that you should have to pay a command point. I think that's a bit overzealous, given the nerfs that it already got. But, you know, I think it's only costs about 220 points base, I think, and I think 240 points with the double butcher cannons, double storm cannons. Yeah, they're 10 points each, so it'd be 240 points. You know, 16 shots, strength 7, AP -1, damage 2. It's still good. It's still good. Obviously, currently with Psychic Awakening, you can take something like the Siege Master Warlord trait, give him reroll 1s to wound and that sort of thing. We don't know if that's still going to be around, so you know, it's okay. It's just I don't know how many people are going to want to pay a command point. That's going to be what I'm saying about a fair few of these units. It's good. It's okay for the points, but I really think that the points were good enough. Nerfing the stats, giving it the points. I think that it's a fair unit. Making you pay a CP it's a bit overboard. You know, the storm cannons are okay. You'll probably see them. I'll give them a go, but I can't say I'm excited to use them in the same way that I'm excited to use the Decimators, for example. Again, the claws. Now, if you had a siege claw and a siege drill, you get to make 1 extra attack with the siege claw. But again, it doesn't have the reroll wounds anymore. So I think that the siege drill would just be a better choice. And I think you should probably go for the siege drill and a gun and a ranged weapon, just to make the most of it. I really do. Seeing as it's only 10 points for the storm cannon, or 20 points even for the melter lance, I think going for 1 chain fist and 1 gun is definitely what you're going to want to do, unless you want to double gun it, which is again unfortunate because I do have a double chain fist Leviathan, so he's going to have to change. But what can you do? It's okay. You've all got -1 damage, of course. Yeah, it's nice. I really think they could have done without making you pay a CP for each one you want to take. I really do think they could have done without that. Yeah, it's alright. I'm always trying to convince myself that it's good, so I'm going to just move on. Because the Derridio, actually, I've got an even worse opinion of. I actually don't think these are worth taking at all. Last edition, they were a hot unit. A lot of people like to take 3 of them. Mainly because of the Greater Havoc Launcher, I think. You take a Greater Havoc Launcher for the ignores line of sight shots and the Butcher Cannon array. You know, they've lost the Greater Havoc launcher, and neither of the missile launchers it has now are really that good. So you've got the normal missile launcher. It's essentially the Greater Havoc launcher, heavy 3d3, strength 6, AP -1, damage 1, but it doesn't ignore line of sight, so no reason to take that really. It's not very good without the ignoring line of sight. The air defense missile is okay, strength 9, AP -3, damage d6, and it gets 2 to hit against aircraft, so it will be hitting on 2s, it'll be negating the -1 to hit, then getting +1 to hit on 2s, so that is good. And it's damage D3 +3 against an aircraft, so it's reliable, but it's only one shot, and it's one shot that can do a maximum of 6 damage. If you had 3 of these on the board for some reason and you wanted to just target an aircraft and try to really make sure you get rid of it, it could be worth it, but honestly they're too expensive for what they do now. They're about 190 points base, I think, and 200 plus points by the time you've got the upgrades on them, and I really think that it's too much. Yeah, they're 190 points. They'd be 210 with the air defense missiles. 210 points. All you're really getting extra is the defense missile compared to the Decimator. The Decimator is 160 points with the twin Butcher cannons. The Derridio is 190 points with the equivalent of twin Butcher cannons. It has its auto cannon battery, which is heavy 8, strength 7, AP -2. So it is Butcher cannons, and it's still 12 wounds, toughness 7. It's still got its 5+ invulnerable save. It's essentially the same unit, but you're paying 30 points extra for the -1 damage and twin heavy bolters, but you're losing any potential demonic ability synergy, any potential buffs that you get from Masters of Possession or Lord Discordance or your own stratagems like Demon Forge. And I don't think there's any reason to really bother with one of these over a Decimator. I really don't. If I'm wrong, you can let me know, but I just don't see why you would take one, honestly, over a Decimator. They're the same choice. They're both an Elite's choice. They're not a heavy and Elite's choice. They're just both Elites. Yeah, I really don't think the Derridio has much of a point at the minute, unfortunately. Now the Greater Blight Drone. Oh, the Greater Blight Drone. I don't know what it did to deserve this treatment. I don't know what it did to deserve this battery, this array of damage 1 weapons. It's 9 wounds as well, range and movement 14, so it's okay. But its Bilemore is basically a Flamer's assault D6, range 12, strength 7, AP -1, damage 1. It's a plague weapon, basically. It doesn't say it's a plague weapon, but it can reroll wounds of 1. So, the Blight Reaper cannon can also reroll wound rolls of 1, but it's heavy 4, strength 7, AP -1, damage 1. So it's not even the same as a Reaper autocannon, which are AP -2 now. And then the Greater Plague Probe. I don't know what makes it greater. It's only strength 6, AP -2, damage 1. I don't have the Death Guard Codex on me, but I'm sure that even the normal bloke drone plague probes are, damage D3, if not 2. And this is just, all of its weapons are damage 1. None of them have a particularly good AP or a high rate of shots. I don't know what this is for. I don't know who would ever use it. I don't know what purpose it has. It's not even cheap. If it was really cheap, if it was 80 points, I still wouldn't bother because I'd spend 80 points on something that was good. But it's not. It's just I don't understand why they decided that it needed this kind of nerf. If you want to pay all those points, how much is it? Let's just see how much they're making you pay for this thing. 125 points. Yeah, for something that's got nothing but damage 1 weaponry, I don't see it at all. It's, it's just rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Very sad. I do have a couple of these. They didn't see play last edition. I don't think they're going to see it this edition either. But the Dreadcore drop pod. Now, this is a unit that I think has taken a bit of a nerf. I don't know if it's intentional, though they have put out an FAQ since and not addressed it, so it might be intentional. But despite having the normal drop pod rules, drop pod assault, you know, it can come down turn 1. You can't get out. Now, it has this issue because unlike a normal Space Marine drop pod, it's still a transport, and the rules for transport so that you can't disembark after deep striking in. You can't do it on the turn that you arrive. But it doesn't have a rule like the Termite does, which we'll get to later, where it says you can deploy you arrive and deploy the models. It has a special rule that allows that. This one doesn't, so you can bring them down turn 1, but you can't get anyone out. And if you bring them down turn 2, they have to get out on turn 3. I think it really limits what you can do with it, because, you know, if you bring it down and it just has to sit somewhere, and hopefully not get destroyed. You know, because if you just bring it down and it's like a sack, that your opponent's like a pinata, they just get to crack it open, shoot whatever was inside. And if they don't do that, then they're just going to at least move away from it, because you're going to be limited by your disembark range next turn. It's going to be easy for people to just move away from it, you know, even if they don't manage to destroy it. So I think it's really limited by that rule. I've seen, obviously, you know, Beard on Tabletop Tactics using it from turn 1 as a skimmer transport. It's just an expensive Rhino, basically. It's an expensive Rhino. It's still 115 points. I'm pretty sure it's still 115 points like it was last edition. What does it even count as? Oh yeah, 115 points. Rhinos are 80 points, so you know, it's 35 points more than a Rhino. The advantage you get is it can move 12 inches. I think a Rhino can, but it can skim, and it has its blades, which are good actually. It's strength 12, AP -4, damage 3, but it's only 4 attacks with weapon skill 4+, so it's not, you know, if it hits it'll be good, but otherwise. And the thermal jets are good. You can select a unit that it's moved across, and on a 2 to 5 it suffers D3 mortal wounds, or on a 6 it suffers D6 mortal wounds. So it is quite good in that respect, and I guess that's what you're paying the points for. But you know, you're not buying it to cause mortal wounds or to stab things with its talons in close combat. You're really buying it to transport your troops down, and it's just not really doing that at the minute. Oh, it's not going to stand up, is it? It's just not going to do that for you. So I'm going to give it a go, but I really don't. I feel like that rule is really going to negate how much you can reasonably use it. And I think it's a shame, because you know, it's one of the unique things that Chaos has. And despite being one of the unique things that Chaos has every edition, I've always just looked at it and wished that it was a Space Marine drop pod, just a normal Space Marine drop pod, though cheaper and more useful. And you know, it's a shame that we've always had to at least shell out, you know, twice the points, just because it's a transport as well. Even if it's in the past been more useful because you could get out when you deployed it. You know, I'm really not sure about it, but I'll still try to use it, because it's you know, it's unique compared to what you've got in the Codex with a Rhino or a Land Raider. It's a unique thing to bring on. It's another element, another way to deploy a unit. And you know, tactically, if you had a unit inside it that you didn't necessarily need out, normally I would use it to either put out a combat unit or a unit with, you know, that's full of melter guns or something. But if you put it, you know, with maybe a unit that isn't equipped with much or is more focused on survivability, And the idea is to bring it down right in the corner of the table or something, and just, or behind, you know, a really big terrain feature, and just have your unit sit there, and then maybe later game get out and start scoring some objectives. You know, it could be useful, but I think it's going to be something you're going to have to consider, not just the units you want to put in it, but the missions that you're going to play, and, you know, whether it can help you really score certain objectives. But it's okay, you know, it's all right. It's just a shame that you're limited at not being able to get out on the turn you come down, because that's really I think the main thing that people want Dreadnought drop pods for. But, you know, it's all right. Now then, the Blood Slaughterer. This is another unit that I love. Mine looks a bit different to normal. They normally have these crabby legs. Mine's on a sort of a track body. But it's something I like because it's so unique. It's just gorgeous. It's got such a cool design to it. Really gorgeous model. Nothing else like it. There's no marine counterpart that it's just warped off of. It's a completely unique thing. It's quite expensive. I think they're about £60 now, £56, £60 or something. But it's very classically chaos. It's very classically chaos, and I think it's definitely something that you should have as a chaos player, especially if you're World Eaters or something. It's maybe not as good as it was last edition. It had a lot more attacks last edition. I think it had, you know, maybe 8 or 9 attacks, even 10 maybe. It's now just got 5 on its profile, and if you take 2 Slaughter Blades, it will go up to 6. But personally, I think that the Impaler Harpoon cannon is definitely the better option than just getting an extra attack. It's had a buff, a really nice buff that I appreciate, in the sense that it's dropped down to 9 wounds from 10. Because nobody likes those 10 wound models that are still bracketed. It's just, they're not worth having 10 wounds. Nobody wants 10 wounds on a bracket. So dropping down a wound to 9 is brilliant. It's always going to move 10 inches. It's always going to be weapon skill 3+, and it's always going to have 5 attacks. It's strength 9, AP -3, damage 3, you know, with 5 attacks. Brilliant, really good, really solid. It's essentially a Dreadnought, you know, a combat Dreadnought, but it's demonic, so it has its 5+ invulnerable save. And it has Infernal Regeneration, so, you know, unless that changes, +1 wound each turn. And one of the main good rules about it is the Scuttling Gate, which is an auto 6 inches advance. Now, I've made use of this in the past with the Vigilus Soul Forge pack, I think it is, where you can pay a CP for overcharged Demon Forge or something and charge on the turn you advance, so you can move yourself 16 inches and still advance. But, you know, even with that aside, because again it's pretty much gone, it's gone in tournaments already, and it's probably going to go, you know, whenever the new codex comes out. But even without that, being able to just zoom these things up, turn 1, just zoom them up 16 inches, 10 inches plus the 6 inches advance. I think that's really good for any combat unit to just throw it straight up there. The Impaler Harpoon is an assault weapon, so if you did advance, you could still shoot it and hit on 4s. It's mostly the same, but better. Arguably better. Last edition, anything you hit with it, you got +2 to charge. Now, this time around, you have to actually wound it. It has to actually suffer wounds, not just be hit with it. But in addition to getting +2 to charge against it, you now half its movement. So anything you shoot with this, if you wound it, half movement next turn until your next shooting phase, and you get +2 to charge it. You know, these are really good, and they're only 160 points, I think, 140 points maybe. 140 points, and they were 180 points last edition, so it's 40 points less, down to 9 wounds, so it's better already, in my opinion. I think for 140 points, you know, a 10-inch moving demon engine that can auto advance 6 inches, has 5 attacks at strength 9, AP -3, damage 3, has an Impaler Harpoon that it's good at hitting with for a change because it's BS3 as well now, that gives you +2 charge, half the enemy's movement. I think it's great. I think that you should have 3 of them. I'm going to buy 3 of them and hopefully run them with, you know, maybe a Khorne themed Lord Discordant, so they get +1 to hit. and just try to race them across the field as quickly as possible. I think they're great. I think they're definitely something I'd consider a winner, and I think they're really worth mentioning because they're not something you see very often. I think people overlook them. It might be the price. Again, I think they're good £56–58 for a very small model. So a lot of people probably just don't want to buy them, but they're really good in game. I think they're you know, if you're looking at a World Eater's army, or really any army, and you want some kind of combat machine, but you don't just want to take a Dreadnought or Contempt of Dreadnoughts or something, I think this is definitely a really solid choice. And I put this with the Decimator as one of the two main winners from this book. Now, the Landlord of Proteus, I'm not a fan of. I don't like it. It's just as expensive as a normal Land Raider, but I don't think it's nearly as useful. It has, you know, the 2 twin las cannons, the same transport capacity. I think that's gone up. I think last edition it was a transport capacity of 6. Whether or not that's true, it is the transport capacity of 10 now, so that's okay and potentially a buff. The reason that I don't really like it is because it's basically a normal Dreadnought, but you have to pay a normal Land Raider, but you have to pay a CP for Martial Legacy, which is again something for the Demon Engines you don't need to. You don't need to pay it for the Blood Slaughterer or the Decimator, and that's one of the reasons I think they're really good. But you would need, it's a normal Land Raider, you have to pay a CP for it, and I just don't think that it has the main things that differentiate it from a normal Land Raider are the Explorator Augury web and the Heavy Armour. The Heavy Armour just gives it a 5+ invulnerable save. I honestly don't think that a 5+ invulnerable save is very important for a Land Raider, because at a 2+ armour save, even las cannons are still leaving you with a 5+ armour save. You've got to be hit by a melter weapon or something else that's AP -4 to really notice, you know, the difference between a 5+ invulnerable save and a 5+ armour save. You know, I don't think that it's really worth it. You're mostly not going to use it probably. You know, if you know that your opponent has lots of melter, maybe, but generally speaking, they're probably not going to have that much. It's probably mostly going to be las cannons and things shooting at it, AP -3 or 2 even. So, you know, it might not turn up too much. And the Augury web, it's okay. It's a 12-inch denial for Deep Strike. So, you know, 12 inches coming out from your Land Raider. It's a big model, and it would be a fair distance. You know, 12 inches to one side, 12 inches to the other side, back and forward. You know, you definitely could shut down a significant portion of the board. A good 12-inch bubble. So, you know, 24 inches from side to side, plus the 8 or so inches of the Land Raider itself. It's a big space. It's a big space, and if you're playing somebody that is planning to deep strike things, or, you know, use whatever the mechanic is now for deep striking for their specific unit, it could be good. It's something that I think you would leave definitely in the backfield in your own deployment zone. Maybe even take 2 of them. Take 2 of them, have one either side of your deployment zone, have them sort of interlinking in the middle to just have this enormous zone. You could pretty much get, you know, 48 inches, because you'd have 12 inches either side, plus the, you know, 5 or 6 inches in between, so you could pretty much cover your whole 48-inch board edge, just with 2 of them. Well, if you were going hammer and anvil, obviously, if you were going long ways, it wouldn't work. But generally, you know, that's a big area of space you could shut down for people doing things like popping up Ripper swarms or anything else that has those sorts of abilities. But that's a lot of points. It's a lot of points to just have sitting there, and, you know, it would have obviously the las cannon shots, but if people are shooting back at it, that's going to make you want to put it behind cover, and if you put it behind cover somewhere, you know, you're not going to be getting those las cannon shots. I think so. It depends whether you want to be spending, you know, 500 points or even you know, 250 points to just shut down people's deep strike possibilities. Given that it's a unit that, you know, they could just destroy. Land Raiders aren't that hard to get rid of these days, if they ever have been. You know, it's a lot of points to maybe not really work. They just have to get rid of it anyway, and, you know, they could do easily. It's not something I would spend money on, spend points on, honestly, just to, you know, shut down an area of the board, maybe until it gets destroyed anyway. I don't know. It's a lot of points, but it's an option. It's an option. It's definitely a unique ability, at least among Chaos. I can't think of anything else Chaos has that denies deep strike like this, and there are other armies that have it. I think the Imperium type armies have a few ways of getting it with Inquisitors and things. So it's okay. I'm not sure really. I'm not sold on it. Maybe I'll try to use it sometime, but you know, I'm not sold on it. I don't see it that much. Now the Achilles has always been a tank that I've liked, but it's been horrifically expensive in points. It is cheaper now due to some nerfs, fairly significant nerfs too. You know, I think it potentially is good, and I'm definitely going to, I've got one here, I'm definitely going to use it at least a couple more times, but it has changed a lot. The 4+ invuln has gone down to a 5+, which again, as I said with the Proteus, don't know how often that's going to really help you out in game, whereas the 4+ invulnerable save you did notice, because again, you know, even las cannons and things would, you know, it would have been putting it down to a 5+ armor save. So you did notice the 4+ save, I think a lot more than you're going to notice the 5+ save, but it's okay, it's good. You know, if there is Melter, I know that Eradicators are a big thing these days, so it could help you out against that sort of thing. It's not bad, but it's just maybe not great. And, you know, I think one of the reasons maybe it was, you know, nerfed down a bit was one thing I like to do was take a Sorcerer of Tzeentch, or even on a bike potentially, or a jump pack, and just have him follow it around. And cast Weaver of Fate to bump it up to a 3+ invulnerable save, and then the Land Raider with a 3+ invulnerable save. That was good, but can't do that anymore. Well, you could do it up to a 4+. Is it worth doing up to a 4+? I don't think so personally. I probably wouldn't bother dedicating the points for a Sorcerer just to get it up to a 4+. But good if you wanted to. The main thing that's changed, I think, other than the 4+ save, is the big cannon. It used to just be called a Soulburner Bombard. It's one of the reasons it was so expensive. It was 90 points, 90 points for this thing, and it was 2d3 heavy mortal wounds that could ignore line of sight. So if there was, you know, a couple guys on an objective right at the corner somewhere behind a building that you just couldn't see with anything, you could just pop 2d3 mortal wounds over there and get rid of them. It was really good. Now it's just a standard quad launcher, but it's still good. You know, it's still 4d3 shots at strength 4, AP nothing, minus 1 damage, that can target units that aren't visible. So you can still do that. It's just maybe a bit more fair than than just saying, oh, it's mortal wounds and they're dead. They can now at least take some armor saves, but it's still potentially useful for getting rid of units that, you know, are on objectives that you can't see. And other than that, it's essentially 4 crack missiles or hunter killer missiles. It's, you know, heavy 4, strength 8, AP 2, damage 3. It's still solid. You know, nobody wants to get shot with that in the face. And given that you then have 8 shots now with the multi-motor, I think that actually it could be good. It's dodgy, but I think it could still be good, and I'm definitely going to have a go at it, because if you just blast it up the table into melter range, hopefully, or even not within melter range, both the shatter shells from the quad launcher and the multi-melter are 24 inches. So if you get it within 24 inches, you're putting out 12 shots at strength 8. 8 of them at AP -4, 4 of them at AP -2, damage 3 or damage d6 +2 for the multi-motors. That's a lot of heavy infantry killing shots. It's a lot of anti-tank shots. You could just blast this thing up and probably just single-handedly remove, you know, a whole 6-man squad of aggressors or something. Just blast them away. And that's mainly why I think it potentially still has some use. I could really see it just bombing up the table and causing some real havoc to elite units in a Marines army or something, just wiping away the aggressors, centurions, eliminators maybe. and it has a transport capacity of 6. Now, for me personally, I would probably use maybe a character and a squad of 5 infantry, maybe a Chaos Lord and a squad of 5 chosen with melter guns. You know, just if you need more melter, you know, you've already blasted this thing up there, you've got its 8 multi-melter shots, you've got its 4 missile shots from the quad launcher, and you can just bust those guys out, and that's another bunch of melter shots. It'd be very dedicated, you know, to a purpose, but I think it's potentially good. And even if you didn't want to buy more melter guns or anything, I think that it is worth, you know, just putting in a you know, maybe 1 combat character or 2 combat characters. You know, it doesn't need to be anything important, maybe just a Terminator Lord with a chain fist and a combi melter, and as soon as you get up close to something, you just burst him out and he can charge something, charge some other vehicles. It's always nice to have something inside. If it has a transport capacity, put at least 1 thing inside, just because you can always really spring it on somebody and, you know, hold it until you really need it. You could put 2 obliterators in it if you wanted to. I wouldn't personally. I don't think that they're worth taking without, you know, buffing them up with, you know, all 3 of them plus characters. But if you wanted to, you could have 2 obliterators in there. I would at least put in 1 character like a Terminator. But I think that 5 chosen would be a good choice too, potentially. Maybe armed with plasma, so you can rapid fire off 10 plasma shots overcharged and just, you know, with a Lord maybe, and just try to really hit something suddenly. Yeah, they're good. I think they're good. The trouble is they're really expensive. It's 360 points with the multi-melters. And, you know, that's a lot of points. 360 points. It's almost 100 points more expensive than a normal Land Raider. And they're too expensive as it is. Yeah, oh, and you don't, however, and this is a bit strange, you don't have Martial Legacy, so you don't need to pay a CP for this one. Which is another bonus. I didn't think about that, but I just saw it. You've got Martial Legacy on the Proteus, but not on the Achilles. So unless that's been FAQ'd, it doesn't cost you a CP. So that's pretty good, actually. I think that, you know, if you want to go for a Land Raider, then I think that going all in for this thing, paying a load more points just to get this, it could be worth it for you. I definitely like it. But, you know, it's probably not going to win any tournaments, but I think it's a decent enough choice. But, you know, 360 points, woof, that's a lot of points. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for tonight. Thank you if you've stuck with me this long, and hopefully I'll see you for part 2.